Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to our City of Little Rock Board of Directors agenda meeting to set the board agenda for December 2nd. I want to welcome everyone who's watching and or streaming online, as well as those who are here in attendance. We'll kick off our meeting with our Little Rock Chamber Economic Development Update.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. I'm going to be very quick. I know that you have, that's not, here we go. I know that you have a lengthy agenda. Wanted to come before you tonight and talk about a little of the work that we've already done for the last 3 years, give you an update on what's happened in that 3-year time frame, and then very quickly walk you through what our plan will be for the next 3 years. I want you to know you're going to see a very short version of this, and we'd be happy to sit down and visit with each of you individually if you would like for us to go through the entire plan. So I don't know if this is going to work for me. It does. We started this work in terms of being a regional economic development juggernaut for Central Arkansas and Arkansas effectively 20 years ago. And so you can see from these numbers, if you look at the jobs numbers, the payroll, the new taxable CapEx, those are only projects that we worked and had an incentive agreement with. So if any of your businesses were part of growing and we're part of hiring new folks, if we didn't have an incentive agreement with you, then you're not in these numbers, because we only want to take credit for the work that we're doing. You can see now how many more people are working in the region than when we began this 20 years ago, something that I think is really important to each of you. Our GDP has nearly doubled in that same time frame, and we now have 124,000 or so folks, more of those folks living in the region today than in the past. If you look at our goals and results from the standpoint of the last 3 years, you can see those 4 major areas. You can also see that we have met or exceeded all 4 of those. So again, I'm not going to belabor that, but this gives you the big numbers for the last 3 years in terms of new jobs, new payroll, capital investment, and then some logos of those companies that have been a part of these numbers. You will see both existing industries within these logos as well as new industries, and the reason for that is obviously an existing industry expansion is more important to us in many cases than a new company coming in. So it's one thing to make the sale, it's another thing to see that sale continue in terms of expansion going forward. So you see that information. We talked about investing in sites. I hope your ears have been reddened and burning, because I have been talking about all of you for the last several weeks as we've been out trying to put together our next plan for the next 3 years. And I have said this privately, so I'm going to say it publicly. This city board has done more for economic development than any city board that I've ever been a part of in the last 20 years here in Little Rock. And the numbers that you see before are simply because of the investments that you folks have continued to make. And again, as we've been able to take those investments and add state and federal funds to it, it's given us the ability to invest in sites and infrastructure, to support existing businesses, and also the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So this is just a little bit more information of the results in the last few years. Part of that obviously includes what we're doing with the state. Part of that includes trying to attract new talent to this area. Part of that includes working with our local school districts in terms of trying to better educate, better prepare, I should say, our students both for college and career. Part of this is our Create Little Rock programming. When we ran the talent attraction campaign, they were very involved not only in that, but also in a lot of our site visits when we had companies from outside the city, outside the state, and even outside the country talking about recruiting and retaining talent here in the Little Rock area. Direct workforce support obviously is a big part of what we do. We've done that for many companies. We continue to do that work. We take workforce analytics down to the census block level, so that when a company's looking for specific types of talent around the city, around the county, around the region, we're able to help with that. And this just shows some of those results over the last few years. One of the things that we came together and decided in 2023 that would be indicative of everyone doing well is if we went from 351,000 people working in this MSA to 400,000 people working in this MSA, then that would literally mean the economy got better, hopefully for everyone. And so the 400,000 person working in this region goal was not expected to happen until 2033 based upon our goal setting. We believe now, based on the growth that we not only have already talked about, but also the growth that we know coming forward will likely get us to that 400,000 number by 2029. So you look at the strategic initiatives over the next 3 years, business attraction, retention, and expansion. Obviously something that we're known most for. Also the entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation area with the tech park, with all the different innovation activities that are going on around the city. And then obviously talent development, recruitment, and retention is of utmost importance, because without the ability to not only create our own, but to attract and retain those folks, it's difficult to have success in economic development. On that first focus area, you see these 5 major areas. And again, in the full report, we can show you different strategies about how we're going to do these things over the next 3 years. Obviously, our economic development contract with the city is an annual contract, but we want to show you what that plan looks like for the full 3 years. The second piece is the entrepreneurship piece. While we have become known as a fintech hub from the perspective going back to Systematics in 1968, with what's going on now from the financial technology industry and the new tech that has happened here. There's a whole host of other ways that we're going to be able to take advantage. We talk about the steel industry in Northeast Arkansas. We talk about lithium in South Arkansas, and we sit right in the middle of that. And the technologies that are coming online in both of those arenas, we believe we stand not only ready to help with that, but also from a geographic standpoint, it's going to help us recruit more business, whether that be advanced manufacturing, technology, or otherwise. You see, again, the 5 major areas there that, again, I will be happy to go into more detail about. The third piece, the third focus area being talent development, recruitment, and retention. One of the things that we did in the Love Little Rock Talent Connection campaign was to identify the types of positions that companies around our area were having difficult in finding that type of talent. We then pushed that out with the marketing plan that we put together. And what we found was we had people in almost every state of this country that was interested in talking with us about potential positions here in Little Rock. We also had some international folks. Well, if we can only do that type of program, that type of project because of funding, if we can only do that for 90 days to 120 days, how can we take that same information and make it ongoing month after month, year after year? And so we're going to continue to work on the talent gap aspect of it and attracting talent. Obviously, the developing pipelines really includes our public high school students in Pulaski County. The expanding education opportunities. You know, when we started the Academies of Central Arkansas work in 2018, our goal was to get that up, get it implemented, and then make it into its own foundation, its own team. That has now happened, and so there's great and exciting work happening in school districts all across the county. You see also lifestyle and livability. That's not something that we've ever been a big proponent and part of, but because of our partnered work with you on what's happening in downtown Little Rock, that's as important, if not more important, than what's happening at a port or what's happening at some other place outside. So working with you folks and trying to take what Sasaki has come back with, working with you folks and what we hope to see just down the street at the Clinton Presidential Center, all of that creates economic development. So over the next 3 years, you see what our initiatives and measurables will be. I go back to the fact that our goal was to be at 400,000 people by the end of 2033. And again, we're going to hit that number quicker. But one of the things here that I really want to spend just a minute on is the national public perception. You know, if we don't give the national and regional media a reason to talk about the good things that are happening here, oftentimes all they are able to report are the negative things. And so if we are purposefully working, as we learned in the Love Little Rock Connection campaign, that it does work. We do have a good brand. We have to continue to expand that brand and give people a reason to think of us and not think badly of us. That's part of economic development as well. That's part of recruiting talent. That's part of giving people a reason that already live here, pride in the fact that they live here and the opportunities that come from that. So we have a significant strategy around that. It's called Experience Little Rock. Another thing that we'll be happy to sit down and visit with you folks about in terms of what we're doing from the economic development, talent attraction, retention, and the pipeline aspect. I only show this to you to show you that you guys, because of your investment and the private investment in this city, in this region, continuously outbox our weight class, if that's a great way to say it, which is probably not. But we fight well above our weight class when it comes to actually competing with all of these markets. At the same time, they're spending way more money. That's fine. The ALOPAC project, as many of you know, it came down to us, Kansas City, and Oklahoma City after looking at 25 metro areas across the Midwest and the Mid-South. We were the smallest, and yet in the end, we won it. And as Renard Driesman said at that announcement, it was because we thought big and we acted big. That's part of what you guys have allowed us to do. So this just shows you what we're competing against, and we will do our darndest every single day to continue to win in those competitions. You look at some of the engagement activities. Obviously, many of you have been a part of those over the last couple of years, and this is a thank you that we give to all of our not only economic development prospects, but our investors. And you can see, obviously, the city of Little Rock is at the front and center of that. So I go back to the very beginning and see if you have any questions by showing you what that looks like. Tech Park, airport, port, and then obviously at Dassault Falcon Jet. With that, I'll get out of your way unless you have any questions.
Director Miller.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and congratulations, Jay. Thank you for this wonderful report. I want to make sure I understand. When you say region, we're talking about 5 counties?
Actually, from an economic development standpoint, we work in 13 different counties. And the reason for that, Director Miller, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a minute about that. We have projects that want to come to the Little Rock region that simply wouldn't be competitive, for example, at the port from a wage standpoint. And so those types of projects work really well in the outer areas of our region that won't work well here in Little Rock, but Little Rock still benefits from that, obviously, because of the commerce that comes from that. The MSA is the 5 counties, the 400,000 person goal is just in those 5 counties.
Okay, so when I look at this report, some of these are Little Rock MSA and some of them is 13 counties around. Okay, thanks. And of course, you talked about retention, and it's very important. We've read the headlines about Amazon and them shutting down the plant. Can you give us any update on that situation?
So, first of all, the way this all came about was their national engineering company determining that they had missed some of the things that they felt like they should have put in place in that building just because we're in an area where we're this close to the New Madrid Fault that there could be seismic activity. There's been no seismic activity. We hope there's never any seismic activity. But because we're in this region, the national engineering firm went back to Amazon and said, we believe these structural enhancements should take place. And so that is going to be done over the next several months. I was on the phone actually on a Zoom with the global economic development head of Amazon a few days ago. They obviously are continuing to work and finish their fourth expansion project here in Little Rock. So they will go about the business that they need to from an engineering standpoint to strengthen that building to the level they believe it needs to be in case something were to ever happen. It's just going to take some time. Again, it's only in an abundance of caution that they're doing this. They have been very good with the employees that they currently have in terms of what they're offering them for the next 3 months in terms of compensation, next 6 months in terms of retirement benefits, placing those folks as first priorities in their other facilities, both the one coming online and the ones that already exist here. And then for those folks that for whatever reason aren't part of that overall group, working with us and others, we're actually on a conference call with them tomorrow, working with us and others to be able to place those folks in other positions, because obviously they want them back when the building improvement project is completed. Interestingly, we've also been inundated with other companies calling us, wanting to know if we can schedule appointments with those folks because they're interested in hiring them as well. So the end of the Amazon story will be from the perspective of this issue. They'll make the building as seismic capable as possible. In terms of what the engineers call for, they're continuing to finish the building of that fourth expansion, which will be another 1,000 jobs, another 1.2 million square feet. And when it's all said and done, with both the improvements to the major building at the port as well as the new building under construction, they will have constructed over 6 million square feet of space here in Little Rock. And so they are fully committed to us as we are fully committed to them.
And I think you answered this question in, with what you just shared, but they don't have any other concerns about structural issues with their other buildings?
No, sir. In fact, again, if it hadn't been for the engineering firm bringing it to their attention, no one would even be having this conversation. But because of their commitment to their employees and to this community, they want to make sure everything is right.
Just members of the board, just want to share again, and particularly to Jay and to the public, what you've heard today is nothing short of a great economic story. Our city and region doubled its GDP. We had a goal to be at 400,000 jobs by 2033. We're knocking on that door right now. We lead the state. There's not any other city or region. Arkansas State Capital City leads in economic development, full stop, period. And it's because this city board and myself, since taking office in 2019, we've invested $40 million at the Little Rock Port and got an $831 million return on this investment. And that's the reason why we lead the state in overall jobs, and that's the reason why we've created close to 15,000 jobs. And so that's just a credit to this entire team. And know that we really are doing the Ministry of Jobs together. And thank you for your leadership, Jay. We want to continue. You'll see in the budget presentation, we're going to continue that contract. We know we're going to work out some other things down the road as we've discussed. And just want you to know how much we appreciate you and your leadership, and Jack Thomas, and how you represent us not only here in the city, but across the nation and even the globe. So thank you.
Mayor, I want to end with this because I think this puts exclamation mark on what you just said. We had people from around the country in Little Rock last week that were here from economic development entities across the country. They didn't really know what to expect when they got here, and were all absolutely amazed at what you and we have been able to do together. The success story continues to be written. The growth continues to happen. And as long as we continue to invest in that from a product perspective, from the perspective of our talent, all of those things together is what has brought us to this moment in time, will continue our growth in the future. So again, I didn't want to bring the actual numbers. Thank you, Mayor, for talking about that, because that is an amazing ROI. You don't see that type of return on investment very often. And the most exciting part about this is the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have our Residence Academy. Mr. Celicia Nichols will introduce Mr. John Jenkins. And
Right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Board. We are here and excited to celebrate the successful completion of our Fall 2025 Residence Academy. We had over 25 participants in this fall's cohort, so we are extremely excited about that. Graduates attended a 5-week course that focused on the learning and procedures of our Code Enforcement Division and a variety of city services. Over the past week, each of them have shown dedication, curiosity, and a commitment to strengthen their knowledge. So to the graduates, congratulations on your achievement. We are proud of each of you. Remember, knowledge is power, and what you've gained here doesn't just strengthen you all, but strengthen each of your communities. Again, congratulations. If you all could come up, and we will give you your certificates and take a photo. Mayor.
You gotta squeeze together or go back.
thank you all. Grateful.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. Thank you. What you doing in this class? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Grant, Manish, you guys get started. Rose. Everyone, we got our solid waste study recommendations. We have Raf Tillis, our consultant here, I believe, is Raf Tillis, correct? That will give us the presentation expeditiously.
Good afternoon, Mayor, board members. For the record, my name is Terry Bovary. I'm with Raftalis and led the solid waste cost of service study that we'll be presenting for you today. We just are going to run you through a little bit about the background to set the stage for the engagement. along with our scope and what we were tasked to do, talk a little bit about the financial projections and our findings, and then close out with our key recommendations for you. So we were scoped with performing an operational scan of the solid waste system, including both collection and disposal operations. From there, developed a financial forecast over multiple years, 5 to 10 years. Our focus is over the next 5 years. Identify what the rate and cost of service recommendations would be and perform some benchmarking commensurate with this level of detail of a study. The diagram that you see on the right there identifies sort of a basic methodology for how we determine revenue sufficiency in a financial plan. And the key point here is that, we've got to balance our charges for service against our cost of operations. And that, just to remind, more so for those listening in or members of the public, this is an enterprise fund operation. And what that means in governmental accounting is that we have to have the charges for service to cover the cost of service. So we have to operate like a business, an enterprise-like operation, and that's what that basically means. So this provides an overview for those that aren't familiar with the services that are offered by the Enterprise Fund. We primarily serve residential collection, single-family homes at the curbside service, 1 time a week trash collection, every other week recycling, 1 time a week yard waste, 4 times free bulk pickup, and 1 roll-off per year, which is a very high level of service on the bulk relative to other types of operations that we tend to survey, and just want to make that clear. We do service a small number of commercial cart service, so they are on the same routes as our residential, and we pick them up as well and charge them. And then there's the landfill operation, where we operate a Class 1 and a Class 4 landfill, which basically, for those members of the public, just means we, Class 1 can accept trash, municipal solid waste, and then Class 4 is more construction and demolition type debris, non-putrescible waste. We also have an e-waste drop-off, and you can see my typo there, see flyer. So the website has a wonderful flyer about all the details of the e-waste drop-off centers that are available to the city residents. So I'd like to talk a little bit about inflation and the cost of service. Everybody is probably acutely aware about the inflation that they experience every day, from the costs of the grocery store to the pump and all these different things. But what they may not be aware of is that the cost for solid waste operations has actually been higher than the general consumer price index for the typical resident. And so the chart on the left presents a cumulative inflation index, the blue line representing the consumer price index for a typical resident, and then the red line represents those costs for the same consumer price index, but it's a subcomponent for the trash and collection index. And it just shows that, since 2018, we've had greater inflation to the cost of operations than we've had for basic inflation. And there's a few different reasons why that's occurred. We've had some notable events from the challenges with the recycling industry beginning in 2018 to COVID in 2020 to geopolitical instability in 2022 and so on. And so these things have exacerbated inflation as it relates to solid waste operations more so than just purely CPI. And if we were to apply that to the charges for service, which haven't really increased since 2020, you'd sort of see with that green dotted line where the monthly bill for residential service would sit as opposed to where it's at today. Not necessarily suggesting that that is a basis for a recommendation, but just an observation of the inflation and the cost and the fact that, we've not raised rates in some time. And there's some reasons for that, and we'll go into that momentarily. Just to kind of continue on with the point of inflation, we just heard a wonderful presentation on economic development, and some of the offshoots of that wonderful outcome is that we have more competition for the same labor. And this chart right here shows you labor cost increases for solid waste operations over the last several years, along with a dotted line representing the basic CPI. And you can see how our labor costs have outpaced basic CPI, and this was necessary to retain qualified licensed drivers within the solid waste operations as other businesses moving in, competing for those same employers. And that's a benefit to those folks that are providing these types of services, but it's a reality, the cost within an open market system for the labor to retain them, to provide the, wonderful service that we have here at the city. In addition to labor costs, which is a central component of the overall cost of operation, another key element is the vehicles and the equipment that's necessary to provide these services. This chart shows you a number of vehicles by the types of vehicles that are necessary to provide all the services within the city, and then an estimated replacement cost if we had to buy all of these vehicles new. What you'll notice is that at the bottom of this table, we've identified the average age of the fleet at 6.3 years, and that's right around when you would want to replace a vehicle, is around 6 to 8 years. But 6 years is really the objective here for this operation. So what that tells us is that our fleet is at need for overall replacement. And that's going to be an important point that we're going to make in a second here. As part of the operational scan, my colleagues who aren't here today, but performed an in-depth review, identified 5 key areas for opportunities for continued improvement. And, I think everybody can kind of read this at their leisure. I think to be expeditious in the presentation, all I would say is that staff has been focused on improving technology and efficiency. One of those things I'll just call on routing software. Right now, the current system is more of a manual process, and it becomes very difficult to ensure efficiency of the routing when we don't have the latest best practices and technology that are out there, and that the city department is making investments in those areas, and that we would expect that we would see some efficiency from these investments over time. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about is, we're going to have a multi-year projection of rate increases, and to the extent that you can realize some of these efficiency improvements, which we would expect from some of these types of investments, and given what we've seen from this operational scan, could help to mitigate the need for future rate increases down the line. But we've got to make these investments first, and we have to realize those savings before we can come to those conclusions. So I'd just like to transition now into the financial projection, and we have a lot of detail, frequently asked questions that we could go into if anyone had a more detailed question about how we develop these assumptions when we create the financial projections. But I'll just step you through the 2 charts that you see here and give you a high-level overview. The chart on the left presents bars, and those are our annual funding requirements. And then the line represents our revenues to the enterprise operation. And the first observation I would make is if you look in 2025, our only bar that we identify are operating expenses. And our line represents our revenues, and you can see they're 1 for 1. And what that says is that starting out our forecast, we only have enough revenues to really cover the cost of operating expenses, but we don't generate sufficient revenues to cover any capital reinvestment needs of the system. And if you recall, I mentioned earlier the importance of fleet for the efficiency as well, how many vehicles we have to be able to provide that. And if they're at end of life, and one of the statistics I didn't present today, but staff shared with me, is that we've seen a pretty significant increase in the number of hours of downtime that the vehicles have had since 2020 to today. And there is a correlation to the age of the vehicle and the condition of the vehicle. These vehicles are also required to run up the landfill, and that can put additional wear and tear too when you're having to run them there. So point is that, we've got a very short window through which we have to adjust our fees to ensure we can generate enough money for capital reinvestment to pay for replacing that fleet and equipment. And if we don't do that, if you look at the chart on the right, the bars represent the targets of cash we want to hold by its individual component, and we would want to set aside for our current liabilities, our closure and our post-closure care. For members of the public that aren't familiar with what that is, that's the liability and the cost we have to close the landfill once the landfill has been filled up. And so we have regulatory requirements to set aside for that liability, so we have to maintain a reserve for that, as well as our 15% reserve target, which is a financial policy of the city. And if we don't do these rate adjustments, you can see the solid green line represents a projection of our ending cash balances. We're going to fall below those targets this upcoming year, and we're going to go negative by 2029 without any action. So in order to maintain financial sustainability of the system, ensure the capital reinvestment, replacing all that fleet, and doing those efficiency things that I was just mentioning about investing into collection routing technologies and other efficiencies, we've got to adjust rates based on our projections. And here presents for you what that would look like for a typical residential customer, and also for those customers that would be paying the gate rate at the landfill for Class 1 and Class 4 material, as well as yard waste. So the table at the top would show that we would be proposing an increase of about $10 per month next year in 2026 for the typical monthly residential bill. However, thereafter, it would be much more sustainable inflationary type increases, about $2 per month. And I think that's where in 2027 beyond, you have the opportunity to reassess the need for those adjustments closer in time to when you're going to implement them. However, we'd recommend adopting a 5-year plan as part of this study, which we'll close out on the recommendation slide. As far as the tip fees go, we're trying to go a similar type of inflation between 3.5% or so per year at $2 increase for both the yard waste and the Class 1 and the Class 4 tip fees. The other thing I'll point out is that we also allow municipalities, North Little Rock and Maumelle, to bring materials into the city landfill, and that there was an agreement that was agreed upon between the municipalities, and the current fee is around $22.10 before the addition of state fees or taxes. When we looked at the cost of service, we found a big discrepancy there. These fees hadn't been looked at in some time, and so we performed this cost estimate. And I know there's a lot of numbers and a lot of notes there. All the notes are just our key assumptions that went into how we developed the cost of service. And then on the right is a table that shows you how we calculated, and it's broken down by the key components of cost, from the direct operating expenses to the closure costs to the cell expansion costs. And so when we add all of those things up plus overhead and a reasonable rate of return, we're closer to about $37. So we would recommend, consideration of relooking at that rate when those agreements expire, to ensure that you're recovering at least your direct cost of operations would be our recommendation. Now, we believe that that agreement will be up in 2027, so there might be an opportunity at such time to review these rates. So how do we compare with other municipalities, for the residential solid waste fee? Currently, we're sort of middle at the pack, and then with this increase, we're going to be at the higher end, but still within range of some of these comparables. The reason why that is because we haven't adjusted our fees in some time, and we have some pretty significant increases to address the capital needs of the system with the replacement of the fleet equipment. I do want to speak, though, that when you look at these comparisons, they're not always going to be apples to apples or a like-for-like comparison, if you will. Levels of service can vary by entity, and also whether or not they're established as an enterprise fund. As we talked about earlier, enterprise funds are generally required to recover the cost of service through the fees themselves, although not always. And, if we look at, for example, Shreveport, Louisiana, $7 per month, that is established as an enterprise fund, but when we dug into their audited financial statements, what we found was a roughly $9 million deficiency per year. So they're getting subsidized from the general fund into the enterprise fund to maintain that fee, because that's not really a sustainable rate for cost of service. So, when we do look at these fees, sometimes we have to recognize that they're not always representative of the full cost of service. So with that being said, I'll just conclude with, we'd recommend consideration of adoption of the 5-year rate plan in order to ensure that we have adequate funding to perform those efficiency enhancements, as well as fund the capital needs of the system, given that, our revenues are really only adequate at this time to cover our operating costs. We'd consider reviewing the municipal tip fees. And then we'd recommend continue to annually monitor the actual cost of operations relative to projections. There's some uncertainty in the forecast around recycling contract ending in 2027. And city staff continue work to enhance operational facilities and assess revenues from other business decisions. And one of the things I failed to mention earlier in the presentation is that, in addition to operational efficiencies, city staff has been working to try to mitigate rate increases. And one of those investments that they're looking at doing is a landfill gas contract, and this contract would result in revenues back to the city. However, it's uncertain how dependable those revenues are going to be from year to year, and given the potential volatility of this revenue stream as well as the uncertainty, we've talked to staff about recommending that any funds from those resources be set aside for future closure and post-closure care costs. Given that closure and post-closure care for the landfill, there's a good nexus in that both the revenue and the costs are tied to one another, but also that closure and post-closure care costs likely won't be needed for some time, years in the future, as you're closing out these landfills. And so it's not important whether this revenue stream is going to be that volatile. So we felt like there was a good matching of the volatility of this revenue stream with the expenditure being out there in the future. So would throw that out as a recommendation for consideration. And then lastly, just to close out our presentation, that best practices are to review cost of service every 3 to 5 years, and we'd recommend a continuation of that. And with that, I'd like to open up for any questions from the mayor and the board this time.
Before we go to the questions, I do want to do it. Manish, if you'll come up real quickly. If you'll just remind the board and all of us, because I think sometimes we may forget that we just recently voted to allow Central Arkansas Water for the next 5 years at what percentage?
It was 7.25%. It's a steady increase for every year for the next 5 years.
And this board, also myself, of course, I also just increased the Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority rates for the next 5 to 7 years, correct?
That's correct.
At what percentage point?
That was 7.25% every year.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Director Adcock?
Yes. Recently, I've been out to the landfill a couple times, and I've noticed lots of North Little Rock trucks and other city trucks out there. So from your presentation, are we supplementing that landfill for other cities, and are we receiving compensation for that covers the expense, or
Yes.
is that what you're saying, they're in the hole?
Yes, ma'am. So we have agreements with the city of North Little Rock, Sherwood, and Maumelle, and they pay us $22, around $22. $22.10 is the amount. $22.10.
So the city of Little Rock is supplementing the landfill to those other cities, and our citizens are paying for it?
No, so that's the fee that they pay us to, dump in our landfill. Now, what Raftellus has identified is that while they're, paying that amount to us, there are some costs that are probably not being, met. Like, for example, we have a lot of costs that relates to operating the landfill. So those costs are not in there, correct? Am I right?
Yeah, I would just say that I think you're correct, Commissioner, that we've had a significant amount of inflation over the last 5 years or so. These rates were set some time ago. There hadn't been a formal cost service study being performed, and I believe that they're probably recovering the direct cost of operations, but not really recovering some of those other costs like closure, post-closure care, and whatnot.
I guess then my next question is to Mr. Carpenter. If I understand this gentleman correctly, we cannot charge them the correct cost until 2027, so we're going to supplement all these costs for the city of Little Rock?
Well, yeah, there was an agreement that was entered into, and, you've got about another, year and a half or so before you can
So
readjust it.
Director Adcock, we signed the contract, we, the city board, everyone. Whenever that contract was signed, it has a deadline. That deadline is 27. Much like we'll see in our presentation, we have different things that we've seen over the years I'll give an example. Planning department, their planning fees or business services fees is $50 every 5 years for a business. Surrounding cities are, 50, repeat that, $50 every 5 years per business. Surrounding cities, they are $40 per year per business. So there are a lot of things that over the years just have never gotten cleaned up and or addressed, haven't kept up with inflation. And so we'll get an opportunity to make certain that we're no longer subsidizing those other cities.
But we can't do that until 2027. I can't believe that Mr. Carpenter did not make some kind of agreement that when the cost went up, that we would also be able to increase the price that we was getting.
Mr. Carpenter didn't do, we won't put that on Mr. Carpenter, but we did sign an agreement. Mr. Carpenter would never do that. I want you to remember that, Mr. Carpenter, too.
And there is an indexing provision to allow the rates to increase, if you don't mind me adding, but it just didn't rise to the level of where the costs sit today.
And that's what Mr. Carpenter put in.
Okay, thank you.
And we didn't change our rates. I mean, that's,
All right,
What you
Director
just
Computers. We'll go to Director Computers.
Piggybacking on what Joan was saying, when you did this calculation on the other cities that are dumping, do you take into consideration what their waste product does to our need to build another cell and how much faster, and then the cost of the cell that you will feel like will be?
Yes, we did. So, yeah, I can go into a little bit more detail if we look at this table. Your question is, did we take into account the effect of the displacement that occurs from the tons that are coming into the landfill from outside the city? And the way that we accounted for it was on the line item called cell construction costs. So that, we do have a very, about 50-plus years before the landfill is going to reach capacity based on engineering estimates. So we have a fairly good window of time before that might be a concern, although that's a subjective determination that you all would conclude on your own. But from our perspective as your rate consultant, when we did the calculations, we accounted for the capital cost of that construction into the fee, and it was approximately $5 a ton, and that was baked into that evaluation.
Are we reserving that money?
No, sir, because right now you're not charging that fee that we've recommended.
Will we be reserving that money?
Presuming that you were to follow through with the recommendations at the time when you'd be able to.
A sprint by Nick.
For landfill closure and post-closure costs, we do pull that back. We have a liability in our financial statements that matches with our cash for that. We're required to do that per ADEQ's requirements, and we complete a financial assurance every year to show that we have funds sufficient to meet our liabilities for closure and post-closure costs.
Thank you. And for the total system, of course, we're setting aside the necessary requirements for the overall cost of closure, but relative to the wholesale rate, the current rate needs to be increased is what we're recommending.
Well, then give us a number of to go on what Joan was asking, how much we're supplementing these other cities by doing
Yeah,
this.
we show it right here. It's, we estimate around $34 a pure cost, $37.70 if you add in a rate of return for risk adjustment that you take, because there could be regulatory changes that require you to retrofit the landfill, things like that. So it's fair and reasonable to consider a rate of return in these types of calculations. The current fee is listed there at $22.10, and then so the increase or the differential that you have is about $11.59. I don't know if that directly answers your question, but that demonstrates the differential in the cost of that we calculated and the rate that you're currently charging.
Give me that number in a month's time or a year's time. I mean,
sure.
this is a number I have no way of
Yes,
knowing
sir.
how big that is.
Yes, sir. Give me 1 second. Let me get my calculator here.
And while we're spending time on this number, I really want the board members to spend time on the other number.
Yeah.
That's the bigger number when it comes to impact on residents is the waste disposal rate.
Approximately 2 million per year if you were to go to the full rate.
So board members, any other questions? Again, I want to remind board members, oftentimes when we have, you'll even look at today's agenda. We're grateful that Fleet is recommending that we change out some fleet in Public Works. If you look at that, somewhere around $2.7 million that we're utilizing from the street fund, but it is replacing some fleets from trucks and equipment that's 20 years old. And I also want to remind the city board is we have been having a rate study every 5 years, but if you all recall, the last rate study was in the heat of COVID-19 in 2020. We got a recommendation. We did not pursue that recommendation because of affordability concerns as it relates to COVID-19. So technically, we have not had a rate increase since 2015. And so clearly we made the right decision for COVID and our residents in 2020. But we do, as this city board voted to increase Central Arkansas Water for their infrastructure needs. This city board voted for Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority for their infrastructure needs. We need to vote for ourselves for our own infrastructure needs. And so what we would like today is go with some of these recommendations, not only for the landfill, but also for the waste disposal, because they're all going to be hitting at the same time. Central Arkansas Water's rates are going to start hitting in 26, Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority. So we need to join them, which we approve them. They couldn't do it without us. We need to do that so we can take care of the basic needs of our residents in a very good way. And so what we would like to do is add the recommendations onto the consent agenda for next week, if you so please. But as I shared with the board member that I was just walking, they'll remain nameless. If I get a phone call about a broken down truck, I'm gonna say, we haven't voted on this yet. And so this is, I think this will be a good thing for all of us. We all experience this across the city. It's past time that we get it done, but we understand the only reason why it's past time is because we were thinking about the residents first as it relates to COVID-19. Do I hear nods for putting this on the consent agenda? Yes. All right. Yes. All right. Director Phillips?
Thank you,
Man,
Mayor.
we have to. I heard that. That's an amen right there. We have to.
And I stepped out, so I don't know if this was addressed in the first part. So if we do approve this, logistically, when will the rates go into effect?
Next year.
Like what time next year? That's what I'm getting at.
February 1st.
February 1st?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Director Miller?
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to make sure if we do this, and I'm certainly supportive of it, we had Central Arkansas Water and Little Rock Reclamation Authority show what these changes would amount to on their examples. I'd love to see these recommendations along with what Central Arkansas Water and Little Rock Reclamation Authority has projected so that we can see what the overall effect would be on whatever example we use on a typical residential customer, just so we can see that.
We'll get that worked up for you. Yes, but I also just want to make certain everyone understands, not necessarily for you, I know you understand, is it's already going to be a bigger number because of those, and so we'll be in the midst of that number. So whether this board can say we're not going to do it, those water bills are increasing anyway. And as we all know, the water bill has our garbage fees, it has the sewer fees, and has the water fees. So it's increasing in 26 whether this board votes for it or not. And so the question is, do we add on the amount that was shared or not? But it is going to increase. I want to just make sure we're clear from that standpoint. But yes. All right, so Mr. City Manager, we'll add this to the consent agenda based off the staff's recommendations. Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one more question. When you mentioned the new software that would control the routing in a way that we haven't done that in the past, and I know we've been working on that. Is that fully implemented?
Not yet. We're in the process of negotiating a contract with the selected firm.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll keep moving on. We'll just go straight into the agenda. And some of these all of these modifications were, I think, online. Oh, well, never mind. We plan to add these modifications all to the consent agenda for next week. They were, yeah. Any questions on the consent agenda 1 through 15? Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question on number 13, and
Yes, ma'am.
I'm certainly very supportive of it.
Yes, ma'am.
But in reading through it, it generated several questions.
Sure.
And so I wondered if we could talk about those.
And whatever can't be answered by Celicia and me, Kevin will be here next week, but I think we can answer them.
Yeah, and
All right.
that's why I don't want to put
That's
you on the
okay.
spot
I'm
or
ready.
anything, because we can wait. Okay.
Celicia said she's ready. She said, we gotta wait till next week for Kevin.
So I've got about 4 questions, and again, I'm very supportive of this and happy to see it on here. And it had several different, in the resolution itself,
Yes.
it talks about the different ways that it could be funded. And are
Correct.
we planning on putting some initial money in it?
So right now, what you all have in front of you, that's just to establish it, and going forward down later, we will look to actually fund it. So right now, know that the resolution is just to establish the program.
And will one of the things that we might do be to work a little bit more closely with the legislature to try to get them to do something, since they have seemed during this last session to be more interested in housing
yes.
than they have in the past?
Yes, and we'll work with you to make sure that we get with the right people.
And then,
I'm trying to sell today.
Mayor,
a third,
just to follow up on that, this will be a fiscal session for the legislature starting in January, but I think this would be a fiscal issue. We wouldn't have to wait 2 years to look at it.
well, I mean, because we've tried for years to get the housing trust funded hadn't been funded since 2009, I believe.
That's
That is
correct. Yes.
correct.
At the
And-
state level, everyone, not.
At the state
Right.
level, yeah, 2009. And then in the resolution, it mentioned a board of trustees. And is that a board of trustees for this trust?
Yes, so it'll be for the trust. We'll use our CHAB committee to be the Board of Trustees for this program.
Okay. And can you tell me, to refresh my memory?
Community Housing Advisory Board,
Board.
which is a set number based off the city board. I want to say Director Adcock used to be the liaison there, so we had, it's real estate agents, bankers, things of that nature.
And so it could seem that could elevate
It'll elevate the CHAB board.
stature of that board. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Director Adcock?
Item 17 and 18, the city manager is working with a group to.
Director Adcock, if, 1 sec, just because I know Director Miller's on 13, we can just stay in
Okay.
order. Just to stay in order, please, if that's okay. Director Miller, then Vice Mayor Wire, then we'll come back to Director Adcock.
Thanks, Mayor. Remind me of what the Community Housing Advisory Board does right now, and how often do they meet?
Yes, sir. So they meet on a quarterly basis over at the Willie Hinton Neighborhood Resource Center. And right now, they're discussing just different resources that we can give to the public. Like Mayor discussed, we have different realtors on the commission. And so it's just a meeting of the minds, if you will.
What now?
So the last meeting that we had, we provided just different updates. Of course, the government shutdown happened during that time. So we provided different revenues and avenues and resources that we can provide our residents.
The best way is just kind of what Director Webb shared. It will upgrade the stature of the responsibilities of the CHAB board, of folks who are part of the housing infrastructure in the city. Right now, it's a more update-driven and very support-driven of different things that our housing neighborhood programs is doing.
Okay, so I know the devil's always gonna be in the details, but the CHAB will be making the decision about who would receive the funds?
No, sir. So they would basically review the application and then submit recommendation for approval or denial to this board, and then you all would make the approval or denial.
So every decision to spend money out of this housing trust fund is gonna be voted on by the full board of directors?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very similar to the PIT program. You guys, you do it many times in the slate, but you guys, anything over $50,000, you guys make a decision on, so.
Yeah.
And so very similar to our land bank as well. Anytime we have a property up, you all vote on it.
Now, one of the things that I had read in here is that we're gonna be looking at affordable housing and workforce housing.
Yes, sir.
Of course, affordable housing, that definition is a HUD definition, right? 80% of
Area
less than
median
area
income. Yes, sir.
what's workforce housing?
So workforce housing is that 80 to 120% area median income. So those are our firefighters, our school teachers, our police officers.
So nothing over 120% of the area median income.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Vice Mayor Wyrick?
Thank you. Some of my questions have been answered. I was curious to know, under the title, it says preservation and maintenance for Little Rock residents. Would this come into play if someone needs roof repair, structural repair to houses, or is this actually new construction, tearing down new construction?
So our focus will be on new construction, developing housing. So it's basically what we're doing under our Home Partnerships Grant Program that is HUD funded. It's just that the income stipulations are higher.
Okay. Why does it say preservation and maintenance?
So that focuses on like the rehabilitation aspect of it.
Okay. Which could be a roof
Roof.
replacement for a single-family home?
Yes, as long as they meet the income guidelines.
Okay. Would
Director
it be,
White, also, you will remember the TNAP that Director Miller helped get created with Director Hancock, and that allows for renovation. So this doesn't identify what the funding sources will be, but that would be a type of funding source the city could use, so it would be available for rehabilitation.
okay. So I'm still on this targeted neighborhood dollars where I'd like to go into my 2 targeted neighborhoods and do renovations such as roof repair, soffit fascia, those visible outside for owner-occupied homes. And I'm wondering if this would facilitate using targeted neighborhood dollars for maintenance of homes.
So I'm not sure if it would do the targeted neighborhoods, but we could rehab the homes with this program as long as they meet income guidelines.
Well, that would give them the money, the dollars, but I just want to make sure that that would be something that you could use for the maintenance as I'm describing it. We talked about using Habitat for Humanities, but that's never happened. So this might be an avenue to still pursue that renovation in neighborhoods that I'm concerned about. The April 15th storm that came through several of my neighborhoods, we had roof damage and other kinds of damages. And so if that will work, then I'm excited about it and the possibility of using targeted neighborhood dollars.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Director Miller?
Thanks, Mayor. Let me ask you, how does this differ from the City of Little Rock's owner-occupied housing rehab program? They fix roofs and things there too.
Yes, sir. So basically, same program. The only difference is the income guideline. HUD requires us to only service those residents that are 80% or below of the AMI. So it'll be the same rehab. We can repair roof, heating, plumbing, electrical, air. We can also do new construction, but it's just that our target audience is different.
So we use our community development block grant funds for our owner-occupied rehab program.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to be siphoning money from that source for this program?
No, sir. We aren't allowed to do that from HUD regulations. We'll be 2 separate pots of money.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so the pot of money here could be private sector and public sector.
Correct. And
funds
then,
and how?
yes, sir, and then the CDBG and home funds, of course, those would be federal funds, and they would not cross-populate with each other.
Okay, so those, our community development block grant funds, our home funds, our HOPA funds, our ESG funds, they won't be in this program.
That is correct. No, sir, they will not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Director Adcock, I believe you're on item 17.
17 and 18. Are we going to fund the removal of these buildings, or are the individual who owns them going to remove them?
Well, with the buildings that we've got on there right now, with one of the buildings, we've not been able to get a hold of anybody that owns it.
Please talk in your microphone.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. With one of the buildings, we've not been able to get a hold of anybody that owns it. All our mail has come back on it, so that would be on us. The one on Western Hills, I'm not sure if that's the one you're referring to or
No,
not.
I'm referring to number 17 and number 18.
On Asher.
Number
Asher, okay.
17,
Okay, the 3101 Asher,
yes.
we have dealt with talked to them a couple times. They've not done anything with us, so that will probably be, the expense will be on us.
Okay, and the other one is on 4412 Asher.
That one, we've not been able to get a hold of anybody that owns the building at all. Every correspondence we've sent out on that building has come back.
Mr. Carpenter, since we do not have an owner, will we be filing papers to take ownership of these?
Well, what we will do is we will pass the ordinance as dealing with abating a public nuisance, and then we will put a lien on the property for the amount that it took to abate that nuisance. And we can foreclose on the lien, but before we would do that, we would want to do a title check to find out who was out there in front of us, like the federal government or the state government or child support, because they would take priority over ours. If that's what it is, then typically we hold the matter. Some of these are, as you did last week, referred to the county for the collection of property taxes for the amounts that they owe us. Some of them end up going to the state land commissioner and end up in negotiated sales or end up in bargains.
Okay. Mayor and Board, under the supervision and the leadership of the city manager, there is a group that is looking at cleaning up Asher Avenue and taking steps to make the buildings usable. You've got so many that homeless people are living in. You've got so many that are falling down. And another group that has abandoned automobiles sitting out in front of them. So I expect we'll see quite a bit of action taken up on Asher, and I think that's wonderful because it's time that we did something on that corridor of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor, why are your hands still up?
It's new, thank you. Could Mr. Jordan come and talk to me about item number 16?
Good evening, everyone.
It's
Yes, ma'am.
a pretty comprehensive change, and I had a couple of questions in regards to, let me get to that particular area. I think Director Phillips has been involved in this. He mentioned this to me a couple of weeks ago. Talk to me about the use regulations. It talks about conditional uses, I-1 district as permitted uses, and those allowed in residential office, commercial districts. What does that do for the current uses that we have now? Does it change everybody?
This is just for the UU area, and it doesn't change the use groups.
Okay.
So basically, what this does, if you
Yeah,
would allow
please,
me,
please.
it does 6 key things, and this is taken directly from our downtown master plan. So it's strategy 4A in the tapestry of neighborhoods section, if you have your downtown master plans in front of you, which calls for amending UU zoning to change permitted heights and requirements prohibit drive-throughs, gas stations, and surface parking lots. And we're saying it does six key things. So the first one is create a mandatory pre-development review meeting. So if anyone were to come and want to do a development in downtown, this establishes an early meeting with the planning staff to align the projects with the zoning standards and mitigate any construction impacts for nearby businesses and residents. So instead of them starting construction at 4 o'clock in the morning, we know we have residences living down there, so maybe they'll start at 6 or 7 o'clock. Currently, our code does not say anything about that. It doesn't have any requirements for pre-development. The second thing it does is modernize height standards and view protections. It eliminates mixed-use requirements that previously complicated high-rise development. It allows 85 feet by right with the taller buildings, 10-foot step back, so you can have that human scale. And above 85 feet they would have to be a conditional use, so they'd have to be approved by the Planning Commission. And if the residences felt the need, they could appeal that to the board. The third thing that it does is it establishes parking maximums. It creates parking maximums to discourage overbuilt parking structures in the urban core. It encourages the use of street parking and underutilized facilities. It requires justification for parking in excess of maximums via shared parking agreements. Right now, we have no maximums. There's only minimums. So we say you can build 6, or you have to build 6. You can build more if you want. So now we're saying you only can build 6. If any more than that, you're going to have to come and give us the justification for doing so. The fourth thing that it does is prohibit incompatible uses. No new gas stations, commercial service parking lots. These would be prohibited to prevent auto-oriented uses that conflict with downtown's walkable character. Currently, our zoning code says nothing about this. Number 5, it enhances standards for drive-throughs. The drive-through uses are restricted to Broadway Street between Capitol Avenue and I-30. The new development standards add and improve pedestrian safety and support walkability. The current code, the existing code, well, if I can say so myself, is weak and impractical. Number 6, standardized hours of event centers. So it sets a uniform midnight closing time for event centers outside the designated entertainment districts. Currently, our code just allows those times to be set by the conditional use. So the overall impact of these amendments, it'll streamline regulations to attract investment and simplify the development process, promote high-quality urban design focused on pedestrian safety and downtown vitality, align district standards with the downtown master plan, which is the most important thing, and protect key river views and discourage uses inconsistent with walkable mixed-use downtowns.
Okay. So this has been socialized with the business owners downtown?
Yes, we have met with 303rd Tower. We've met with Mr. Kelly, Hank Kelly, and Mr. Moses, Jimmy Moses. We've met with the Downtown Neighborhood Association, and we've also been working with the Downtown Partnership. So we've touched a lot of groups. We wanted to make sure not only that our civic groups like Downtown Partnership are on board, but we went and we talked to the residents of 303rd Tower, and because of that meeting, we were able to we heard what they said, and we were able to change some of the things that we were going to propose.
So this pre-development meeting, how do you see that playing out? Somebody comes to your office and they say they want to do some kind of development in the area, and they come to your office and they tell you what they're going to do. And what if they say, I don't want to follow these rules, this is what I want to do?
Well, if they don't want to follow the rules, then they can always go for a conditional use. Like if they wanted to build higher and they didn't want to do the step back, so they would have to go to the Planning Commission and tell them why. But everything all the same, it's a by right use. We're trying to promote residential development here in downtown, which Ward 1 definitely needs it.
So there are some other uses under UU that they could put in. And that gets me back to the conditional uses that I started out with.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a possibility? Because it says I-2 district. I wouldn't think about I-2 being downtown.
Well, the I-2 district is different from UU. That's a separate zoning
But it's a
classification.
conditional use under this UU. At least that's the way I read this. Maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Yeah, you would have to show me what you were talking about. It's two different uses, it's two
under
different
section
zones,
3.
yeah.
It's
Okay.
under section 3 of the ordinance.
I think Brad replied to the debt center, the
Okay.
Okay, I guess that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, Brad. Any more questions on the remaining items? I do, if everyone, you should, I think it may have been a typo, but Director Phillips has an ordinance that'll be on the agenda as well. I want to make sure, you all have that? You all should have, is it? Huh? M6, okay. Oh, I didn't see that, all right. It says M5 on mine, that's right. Never mind. All right. So his will be added to the agenda in the separate section. All right, we are, let me see. Mr. Nicholas Sarpy. Everyone, before Nick goes through what I want to share, just kind of level set as he prepares to share our 2026 budget presentation and proposal developed by City Manager Hubbard and myself and our CFO, Chief People Officer, the entire team. This has been I guess, a labor of love, and today is just a presentation. We will be available to have all department directors going forward every Tuesday until we pass the budget. We really hope we can pass the budget as quickly as possible, but we also know we can go to Christmas or into next year. I do want to make sure everyone's aware, based off of law, we can no longer, if we don't pass the budget by the end of this year, based off of what some things happen in the legislature, we have to resort back to the 2025 budget. And so I want to be very clear on that, so just everybody understands the law from that standpoint. We got to pass it by the end of this year based off of things that happen in Arkansas from that standpoint. Yes.
Are these different now?
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
an update of this.
Yeah, it's an update of that.
Get rid of this.
Well, no, it's still valuable information. So what the binder has is all the detailed presentations from the departments and what they look at in developing the budget. Ultimately, they have a number of different requests, and Mr. Hubbard, myself, and Mr. Sarpy and Ms. Richards and others have to make a decision on how we add and subtract. The good thing is, what I wanted to share, so keep that, because I think it builds a story, is what I would say. It builds a story. That's a foundation for what you're getting today. What I do want to share at the outset, we are happy to report. I know we were concerned just because of the economic volatility, not vitality, but volatility this year. And so there was concern that we probably would have to show budget cuts this year. I'm happy to report we don't have any budget cuts in this presentation. Subject to the city board's vote, there's no budget cuts in here, and so there's no 7%, 3%, 5%, 10%, 15%. There's no cuts. So we are excited about that from that standpoint, and we have of course, the 5% raises for police and fire that we included in their union agreements, and raises for all the employees of 1.75% for every non-uniform employee. So no budget cuts, and everyone is able to get a raise. And Nick will go with the rest.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the Board of Directors. As Mayor mentioned, I'm here to present the 2026 proposed budget. So when we start our budget process, we start with the board's policy statements. So you have your 4 must-do statements: safe city, economic development, basic city service, infrastructure, and then you have your 1 should-do, which is quality of life. We also factor in our core values that the mayor and city manager have put forth for staff to comply with and follow. And those core values are equity, people-centered, accountability, innovation, exceptional service, and professionalism. And then this year, a subset of those, one of the things we were focused on was our ease of excellence. So exceptional service, enthusiasm with culture, energy toward optimization, and excellence in all we do. All right, one of the other things, this slide, one of the things I wanted to make sure we clarified. So it was our projection at the beginning or the end of 2025, once the budget was adopted. We do a 5-year forecast, as is required by city code, to project out what we see in the future years. So we projected a 2% growth in revenue and expenses for the city. We also factored in the 5% salary increases for police and fire, and we also had a 5% growth rate for health insurance projected into ours. As you can clearly tell, in 2026, we had a projection where pretty much every department except for 3 saw declines in their budget. This was where we started, and this is how we began the budget process. This next slide shows the other funds of the city, which all show balance except for vehicle storage and waste disposal, and all have different inflation rates or growth rates in their revenues and expenses based on historical averages and history for those funds. So additional factors that affected the budget preparation. So sales tax, which is our largest revenue source, it's over $140 million, has been outpacing budget this current year. We had a very, very modest and conservative estimate for 2025, about 1% growth in our sales tax based on everything that was occurring at that point in time. Right now, we're trending closer to 4% on the city side and slightly under 3% on the county sales tax. Just as an FYI, for the county sales tax, we get about 51% of the total tax within Pulaski County, but we're impacted by our neighboring jurisdictions. So if North Little Rock is doing well, that's great for us, but if they're doing poorly, that's not good for us. Same with Maumelle, Sherwood, Jacksonville, all those cities. And that rate is about 1%, and the city's rate is 1.25. We had to implement the requirements of our agreed upon union contracts, which included a 5% salary increase for both police and fire, as well as $300,000 for cancer screenings for sworn or uniformed fire personnel. We also are in a situation where we're seeing declining short-term interest rates, which impacts our investment income. We're also seeing, but on the flip side, we also are seeing the maturity of long-dated investments that we purchased several years ago that are coming off our investment statement that were yielding 1 to 2%, and we can get 3 to 4% right now. Impacts of inflation and tariffs, just like you see when you go to the grocery store, the city has those same impacts when we're purchasing or doing projects. And then just increased geopolitical activity and things that are going on across the country and the world. One of the other big factors, and we kind of talked about this earlier, but when those rate increases go up for Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority and Central Arkansas Water, Entergy, and Summit, the city benefits. Because we have established franchise fees, we benefit by those increases. We're also seeing growth in property tax values. We have a projection of roughly around 3.2% for growth in property values that we've received from conversations with the county. On the flip side, we have increased health insurance costs, approximately 9% for an employee-only plan. And then we have increased risk management costs. We've also seen significant increases in jail costs over the last several years, and we have increased costs for public safety software, software that's been purchased through grants or other means that we need to incorporate into our operational budget. Additionally, the budget has the increased debt service of approximately $1.5 million for the short-term note that was approved for the Clinton Park pedestrian bridge protection cell replacement. So what were the areas of focus for the budget? So we focused on public safety funding, ensuring a safe city, housing and beautification, ensuring a safe city. This is where they all lie within the board policy statements. And then the new senior center operations funding, which is part of the quality of life. So general fund revenues. So this slide shows our projection for general fund revenues. So our projection for 2026 is $271 million, almost $272 million is our projection, which is a growth rate of about 2% based on our current forecast, which is kind of in line with where we would project things to be. Delving a little bit deeper, so property taxes, we see a 3.2% increase based off of valuation increases that we've received from the county. And so based on our current forecast, we project those to go up by that amount. Always hopeful that the final numbers from the county, which we don't receive until February, are better than that. But based on our conversations with them, that is what they forecast. Sales and use tax. So as I mentioned, so far we're having a really good year. And our most recent numbers would change this number even more. Our September numbers, which we just received this week, showed an increase of over 13% in year-over-year sales tax growth, and on the county level is about 11%. So for sales tax for both of them, we're projecting a 1.55% increase. Franchise fees. So Scott and his team, they work with all of our franchisees to get projections for what they project our revenues to be for the future year. And so all these numbers are based off of what we received from all those partner agencies. You will notice that there is some declines, and those are tied to phone services and things like that, which are historically a declining revenue source as people transition. I will point out that franchise contra, because that's always a question. It is a contra there because that is used to pay for our debt service for the 2017 capital improvement bonds, as we've pledged franchise fees for those bonds. Intergovernmental revenues is really a on behalf funding that we receive from the state. We receive this every July. That's provided to our pension plans for police and fire by the state. All right, so as I mentioned, our budget for 2020, sorry, that should say 2026, is $272 million roughly, which is a 5.1 increase or 1.9% increase above the 2025 current forecast, and 10.2 million above the 2024 actual results, or roughly 4%, so 2% compounding over those years. And so this chart shows the different revenue sources for the general fund. And as you can see at the very bottom, the bulk of our revenues, over 83%, comes from our property tax, sales tax, and franchise fees. All right, personnel costs, as the mayor mentioned, we'll have continuation of step and grade progression for police, fire, local 100 and union eligible positions, and 911 communications positions. So there will be a 5% increase for both police and fire, and there will be modest increases related to our closed pension plans for both police and fire. On the non-uniform side, they'll see a 1.75% increase for all non-uniform employees. For those who are part of the local 100 or union eligible positions, they'll see this plus their step and grade. So for them, they'll see roughly a 3.6% increase if they're not at step 20. Health insurance is projected to increase by 9%, which equates to about a $1.4 million increase in personnel costs. There should be a resolution coming before you in the near future for a new 12-week paid parental leave program to allow parents to bond and care for their newborn children in alignment with what the state of Arkansas has already done. All right, so on the pension side, the budget also includes a 0.5% increase for both fire and police lot fee contributions as stipulated by lot fee. On the non-uniform pension, there's no increase there. On the APR side, really, it's a $200,000 unchanged budget for that, and that is part of our agreement to fund the unfunded actuarial liability for that plan for district judges and court clerks. And on the closed non-uniform plan, we reduced that budget from $300,000 to $151,000 based off of the plan's funding status, as well as information from our actuary. So as I mentioned before, there's slight increases in our closed police and fire pension plans. Most of that increases drive from increases in property tax, because for each of the pension plans, there's 1 mil that goes to each one of those plans. There will be a slight increase in our OPEB contributions, and that goes into our OPEB as well as goes into our health management trust fund that we've established as we work to get that to be fully funded, as well as a slight decrease in workers' compensation from the 2025 original budget. All right, so on the staffing side, so full-time staffing across the board, across all funds, all departments, we see a net decline of 15 positions from a variety of different departments and a variety of different reasons for those declines. In the general fund, you'll see 10 positions that are reduced across the departments that are funded by the general fund. For special projects, you'll see a decline of 2 positions, primarily driven based off of our decision to move VOCA positions from being grant funded when that grant ended, and there was no more funding for the city for that program to ensure we continued that activity in those programs within our general fund. On the enterprise and internal service funds, you'll see a net decrease of 3 positions, primarily driven by a reduction of 5 positions by our fleet fund, along with some other adjustments there, and then a +2 for vehicle storage. And this slide just kind of shows a breakout that pretty much half of our positions, more than half of our positions, are in police and fire. So for the general fund, the net personnel cost increases are about $4.6 million. That's made up of all the various salary increases and adjustments for health insurance, as we've talked about previously. So on the fleet side, there's some decreases and increases, but overall, there's an approximate decrease for the fleet budget for this year, primarily driven by the low fuel rates, impacting and benefiting all the departments of the city. On the outside agency funding, all are kept static except for the jail, which we're boosting up to $3.6 million. And getting that closer in line with what we're actually seeing on a month-over-month basis based off of our detentions that we are bringing to the county. So on the debt service side, there is an increase of $1.4 million from last year, and that's from the 2025 note. The one thing I will point out, these numbers do not include the 2024 short-term note, and we are proposing, as we discussed at our budget hearing, to refinance that short-term note for the solar facility and take that out long and use franchise fees as a pledge for those. All right, on the expenditure side for the general fund, the budget is balanced at approximately $272 million. So we see overall a 3.35% increase in expenditures year over year. Part of that is the big things that you'll see is outside agency funding, which is the jail costs, salary increases for all employees, as well as the debt service cost. The one thing in the debt service that you'll see that's a little bit of a change, and we'll talk about that shortly. We have budgeted for the principal and interest payments in accordance with the accounting standards for IT related software. All right, one of the other things, in addition to the net increase in the personnel cost, is we did increase our vacancy savings from 11 million to 13.1 million. That 13.1 million is consistent with what we've historically been seeing the last several years in our vacancy savings. We're probably on pace for this current year to be roughly a little bit over $14 million. And we should see about the same next year. Next year also is a weird anomaly of a year where there'll be one extra pay date in 2026 because our pay date would normally be 1/1/2027, which means we'll be paid on December 31st, 2026. All right, so key personnel changes. So the salary increase in the health insurance. We also have 2 parks positions that are net added for the senior center, the 2 zoo positions, as Susan talked about in our presentation. Overall, there's 10 positions that are removed. We have the changes in the different pension plans, as well as OPEB and workers' comp. We've already kind of talked about the fleet changes and their impacts. All right, so other expenditure highlights. So I call this housing and beautification efforts because it's a variety of different things. So $91,000 increase in the weed lot maintenance funding, $125,000 in additional fundings for residential demos, $30,000 increased funding for board and secure, and $26,000 in additional funding for the neighborhood challenge grant. On the public safety side, $1 million for software and technology, as well as $1 million for additional jail costs, plus the $300,000 that we committed to in our contract with the local fire union for cancer screening. We also added one new risk management assistant FTE for the HR department for ensuring a safe city workforce, and which falls within the basic city services category. On the quality of life, we have the 2 additional net positions for the parks for the new senior center and 2 positions for the zoo. So as I mentioned earlier, this slide just depicts the breakout of the debt service between our short-term notes from the 2021, 2023, and 2025 short-term notes. And again, it doesn't include the 2024, which we're proposing to refinance and take out long, as well as the debt service in accordance with accounting standards for subscription costs. And these are primarily within the IT department. Again, this shows the outside agency funding from the general fund. One thing I will also caveat is for Rock Region, which is the one we fund the most, although we only fund $7.8 million from the general fund, we do fund $2 million of it from our street fund as well. So total transfers are about $12.9 million. So there's an increase of about $285,000 from the 2025 adopted budget. There's still $194,000 transfer to the street fund to offset parking and enforcement costs. That is all circularly tied to the parking garages. And then there's a contingency allocation of $1.3 million, which is 0.5% of our revenues, which is dictated by code. So this and the next 2 slides will show the various special projects that are funded for 2026 and the changes from 25 to 26, as well as the change from 2024 to 2026. So as I mentioned before, there's increases for the weed lot maintenance and the demolition residential. All right, and then this slide shows the changes for board and secure, as well as the neighborhood challenge grant. All right, part of our transfers includes our grant match transfers. And as I mentioned to you with the board during my presentation, one of the things that my team had proposed was reclassifying 2 positions, taking 2 positions and making them into 1. And that's why you see the decline here in the grant match funding. All right, so this slide just re-shows the changes in the total expenditures for the general fund by category and shows the $272 million in the breakout between the various category groups. And then if we look at the departments of the general fund, it shows all the changes for each of the various departments and what we've done for each one of them as far as changes go. I will say for executive administration, we break that into 2 because it includes a whole lot of stuff that are not necessarily executive administration as you would normally look at it. The top one, the number 1, is really should be non-departmental, and that includes debt service, transfers out, our outside agency funding, all that it rolls up into that top one, which is why there's that large increase there. And then it also has our vacancy savings in that group. And then the second one is really the operations for executive administration, and really that increase there is driven by the 1.75% increase for all non-uniform employees. So this slide shows the total and the big numbers for police and fire for their 5% salary increases that are reflected on this slide. This slide goes into a little bit more details of the 2 different classifications of executive administration by expenditure category group. Most of these items we've already talked about, but I will say number 4, that increase is related to risk management or insurance costs. And then this shows the true operations of executive administration and shows an increase of about $54,000, which again is driven by the 1.75% increase for all non-uniform employees. Our other funds, so street fund is balanced at $27.1 million. Primarily, we see growth in the property tax, the road millage rate. Again, that's based off of our increases that we're forecasting in conversations with the county. We do see a slight decline in the state tax turnback because kind of leveling out, probably a long run, it's a decline in revenue source for the city, but right now we have it pretty flat. On the expenditure side, as I mentioned, it's a balanced budget. So within the budget, there's the increases for non-uniform employees, as well as Local 100, their 7th grade progression, health insurance costs, fleet cost adjustments, and then other category expenditure changes based off of the department's needs and what they're seeing in those various categories. I will also point out we did increase vacancy savings, and you'll see this as a trend for several other funds. All those numbers are in alignment with what we've historically been seeing for those funds or departments. This slide shows the transfers out for the street fund. There really hasn't been much of a change in the amount that's transferred out, except for the administrative overhead, which is the cost for me, IT, HR, and as you can see, the increase is 1.1%, which is actually less than what it really should be. On the waste disposal side, it's balanced as well at $27.4 million. And this is without any of the proposed changes from the rate study. This is, as it currently stands right now, this is the proposal. If you were to approve the rate increases, these numbers would change. So on the expense side, it's at that same $27.4 million. Increases are the same for that you're seeing across the board for everybody, as well as the increase in the vacancy allocation, which is, again, in alignment with historical what we've seen. These are the transfers that the waste disposal makes every year to various programs and special projects of the city, including the administrative overhead, which is the only area where you see an increase. Fleet Service Fund. So the Fleet Service Fund is balanced at $18.2 million. One of the things that's important to note is the reduction of the 5 FTEs that were proposed by the department. On the expense side, again, we're at the 18.2. The various increases and adjustments that you see here related to fuel costs, increased costs for parts and labor for the department, as well as an increase in the vacancy allocation, again, in alignment with historical trends that we've seen. So vehicle storage has revenue projection of roughly $2.7 million. And these are based off of increases in fees and what we've been seeing historically from the revenue generation from the fund. The vehicle storage has a surplus of $123,000. And so you'll see increases in personnel costs. Again, this one, the point out is that there's 2 additional FTEs added to the fund and the department. Parking garage. So parking garage revenues are at $2.9 million, almost $3 million. A slight decrease based off of what we're seeing and what we checked for the current year as far as revenues go. And this is assuming things stay static and that we keep getting people to go into the River Market parking garage. On the expense side, parking garage fund is a little bit deceiving in that it shows a significant surplus. Part of that is because on the expense side, what you don't see here is that we do have to make an annual principal payment of about $800,000. However, under accounting rules, principal payments are not an expense. They're a reduction of a liability, so you do not see those here. In addition, we've pledged quite a bit of revenue to meet our coverage because the parking garage fund does have, its revenue has been pledged to fund debt service. Those bonds do mature in 2028. I do fully expect us to have sufficient revenues within this fund to probably pay them off about a year early. All right, so just a summary. So all funds except for vehicle storage and parking garage are balanced. Vehicle storage and parking garage both show net income or surpluses of $123,000 or almost $1.6 million for the parking garage fund. All those funds for both of those are restricted for those particular funds, and in particular the parking garage, because it is pledged for debt service. This is a nice pretty slide that shows a breakout of the various revenues by the different funds. And as you can see, 77% of all of our revenues for the city for our operations comes from the general fund. And on the expense side, shows the exact same thing, except for a slight tick up in the overall expenses from the general fund because of those surplus and those two funds. All right, so our plan, budget, and a 5-year forecast. All right, so within code, one of the things that we noticed in going through the city code, and I like to read city code for some reason, we are required to present 2 annual budgets for beginning in the even number year, so it'd be in the odd year that we do it, and so that's what we've done. So the board will approve a budget ordinance for next year, the even number year, but you'll also have 2027 as the planned year in accordance with code. Additionally, code also requires that we do a 5-year forecast, which we do on an annual basis. I don't know that we've ever really presented that 5-year forecast to you, but we're going to do that now. So this slide presents our 5-year forecast. So our 2026 adopted budget is in the first column. Our planned budget per code is our second column. And then the subsequent 3 years after that planned year. So for our 5-year total forecast period. You will see, if you look into the details for 27 and 28, that there are reductions that are occurring within every fund except for, again, a couple. When we did the allocation, we allocated based off of percentages, and just to get this, to show this to balance, because one of the requirements of code is that the 5-year projection does balance, and so we're making sure it does balance. Whether those actually come to fruition is all dependent on how economically we do or on how the city does, and we'll reevaluate those as we do the 27 budget. But that will be, the plan is our starting point for 2027, and we intend to show, in accordance with code, any of the changes that we make to those line items based off of this planned year. So our forecasts have a number of assumptions. It has a 5% increase for police and fire for 2027, for 26 and 27, and then we do a 2.5% increase for subsequent years. We have a 5% increase for health insurance and various other adjustments. So on the street fund, our forecasts show over the 5 years that being balanced. So we project 2% revenue growth and 2% expenditure growth. That revenue growth is pretty consistent with what we have been seeing on the expenditure side. We definitely have been seeing growth rates for expenses probably larger than 2%, but the fund has a balance. On the fleet fund, that fund every year when we budget it, it's going to balance, and so we projected the 2% revenue growth and a 2% expenditure growth for that fund, for this fund as well. Vehicle storage, we have a 1.5% revenue growth rate and a 2% growth in expenses, but you'll see even over the 5-year period, there still is a surplus generated within the fund. And we also, for all funds, we all exceed our required reserve requirements. For waste disposal, just like I mentioned earlier, this is all projected based off of current rates, current structure of waste disposal. We project 2% revenue growth and 2% growth in expenditures. Obviously, if you approve the increases that were discussed earlier, those numbers will be significantly and drastically different. Parking garage fund. So we have a 2% growth in expenses and 2% growth in revenues, but this fund, as we mentioned earlier, has the pledged debt through technically 2028. We did not remove it from the interest costs or anything like that because we do expect operational costs, whether it's maintenance for elevators or other things at the garage to be there, but it does have a very, very healthy fund balance. All right, future steps. So the budget ordinance will be before you on the agenda meeting for December 9th, and hopefully for action and approval on December 16th is the hope. We're going to continue to evaluate opportunities for city-owned property and buildings to put our assets to work. That was one of the topics that we had last year. We're continuing to look into this and work on this and evaluate our options for various city property across the city, with an emphasis, I will admittedly say, downtown. But we continue to do this work. One of the things I've mentioned several times is refinancing the solar facility note with pledged revenue bonds, as well as and factoring in additional funding for the construction of Fire Station 25, where we need approximately $4 million, the new court building, which is approximately $8 million, and the LRPD property and evidence room building build-out, which I don't have an estimate on that one right now. And one of the other things we will be looking at in 2026 is replacement of the SCBAs for our fire personnel. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, Nick and your entire team, and Sandra and Gary and everyone in your department. Want them to know how much we appreciate you all and all the long nights and weekends. So thank you so much. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and thank you, Nick. One of the things that was very helpful when we had the last sales tax discussion was the ability to write out the questions that we had and then send them in and get the answers back in writing. And I know some people have to go back to work tonight, but I have a lot of my questions already written down and I can add some more. And would it be okay to do the same thing, at least for my questions that we did with the sales tax, and email them to you and then you send them out?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Thank you.
Director Phillips.
Well, Director Webb just told me to shut up, basically, so I'll put my questions in writing as well.
She was speaking for herself.
Okay. Well, I think mine's are pretty brief. And I don't know. I think the page numbers might have been a little different, Nick. But first of all, thank you to your team. I've been on the board 5 years now, and I don't remember. I could have forgot whether we had the 5-year projection before. So when I saw that, I was like, I don't remember seeing that before. So I appreciate you highlighting that. And I think obviously this is a over $300 million budget, but this was very clear and as concise as it could be with a city budget. So I want to publicly applaud you and your team and the mayor and the city manager for putting that together. So a couple of big picture questions as it relates to the 5-year projection. So a couple weeks ago, we had the people come in and did I forget what it was called, the employment.
The comp study?
The comp study. So does the 5-year projection include that at all?
No.
Okay. And as, I shouldn't say as, the 5-year projection doesn't include any potential sales tax at all. It's just based on current
situation, yes.
Yeah, okay, understood that. I didn't understand the restricted use of the net income from the vehicle storage fund and the parking garage fund. And if you said that, I missed it because I was taking notes. But can you explain what that is for me?
Yeah, so vehicle storage and parking garage are both enterprise funds. And so as I talked about earlier about the waste disposal fees, the intention of enterprise funds is for them to recover their cost of service for those activities. And so the funds are intended to stay within there to fund their operations and future capital needs and what might have you. The additional caveat for the parking garage fund, and that is why you see the revenues look so good and their net position look so good over the future, is there's outstanding debt. And as part of that issuance of the debt in 2003, we pledged a lot of different funding sources to that debt, including the revenue from the parking garages, from surface lots, from our car rental business licenses, as well as other things, in order to make sure that we had sufficient coverage to meet the debt service requirements for those, for that activity. Fortunately, we've done really well within that fund, and so we have plenty of funds within the parking garage fund to meet our debt service and those requirements. But I will also say that means we issued the bonds 25 years ago almost. And the parking garages, although the board did approve this last year, some overhauls to the elevators at the garages, they are starting to show signs of age. And so I would expect there to be more capital investment and maintenance that we need to make for those garages.
Okay, understood. I appreciate that. Another question just popped in my head. Logistically, as it relates to the solid waste rate study that we had a presentation on today, that's going to be on the agenda for next week. Assuming we approve that, you would need to redo this, basically, or a part of it, right?
We could amend the budget after you approve it based off of that timeline of February 1 and the revenues. And so we could amend those components after that point in time. We could adjust the numbers for this one, but it's going to be a lot harder for us to do that without knowing if the board, until the board has approved it.
Okay, understood. So when we vote on the budget, obviously my colleagues may have questions, and I understand how that goes, but pretty much this, what we've seen today, will be what we voted on, and if we approve that, we would amend it later. It's
Correct.
your recommendation?
Correct.
Okay, understood. The other thing that, and this kind of getting into the weeds, I know there's been conversation as a member of the A&P Commission about renovations to the River Market Hall. How does that impact the line items you had in here for 2026?
So based on the budget, we're assuming operations at this point, since there's been no agreement, no approvals by the board for the entire year. Obviously, if we do approve any agreement to develop River Market Hall, we will adjust the budget accordingly and take appropriate action based on any approval of any agreements.
Understood. And I think that's, well, no, I did have a big picture question. And this probably maybe for you, or maybe the mayor can address it. I know last year, and the mayor addressed this today, that we thought that maybe we would have to make budget cuts, but fortunately, y'all figured it out, cities figured it out, that we didn't have to do that. Big picture wise, if one of my constituents asked me, how do we make this happen without doing budget cuts? What quote unquote saved the day?
I would say what saved today is we have a great CFO, number one, and his team. But really, it's just our sales tax projections really helped us out too, making certain that we don't hold on to positions that historically haven't been a part of the budget, meaning that if there are departments who had positions unfilled for 5, 10, 15 years, there's no reason why we need to hold on to that. So we were very fine-tooth comb with that. So high sales tax, high property tax, we needling through historically vacant positions that needed to move from that standpoint.
Okay. That's the answer I give when I'm asked. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you again, Nick, and to your team.
Director Compuris?
I've got a question after we get through with this before we leave.
Sure. Director Miller?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Nick, for the presentation. Just remind me of what the city requires and reserves that we keep, and what do we have in that now, and what are we projecting to put in with this budget?
So our policy says that our goal is to have 10% of our revenues in our reserves. Now, technically, with our fund balance within the general fund, we meet that requirement, and we exceed that requirement. Within our reserve fund, we have 13.1 million. That number hasn't changed in several years. So if you strictly look at that reserve fund, we're not where we should be, and we've not been there for decades. And that is really where the goal was when the way it's written in code, it was to get that 13.1 up to what would be $27 million currently. But it has been one that we've been struggling to fund since at least 2005.
So are we, I mean, you're just out of compliance with that. I mean, I don't know how to say it. I work in compliance. but-
So technically, we are in compliance, it's just not in that reserve fund. So our fund balance,
Which restricted, that's restricted, I saw that in there.
But if we needed to spend it, so, I mean, there's technically and there's technically. As it relates to it, we got it. However, we set aside a specific account. That specific account, well before I was here, has always been about that 13.1%. But if we need to spend it, for instance, the Clinton Bridge, that was not budgeted. We took that money out of our general fund, and we, thank God, we have increases each month that we're able to figure out. It's a cash flow mechanism at the end of the day as we reconcile, as we talked about other things with Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. So we know how to reconcile with our cash flow based off the month, so we're able to take from this. So we're in compliance. However, this city board put a self-imposed account that's remained the same before 2005, or it may have got it put in 2005, but it's been that way for decades. And ultimately, the only way, and this is just being quite frank, as we look at different things, we have to have an excess of funds to make that deposit. When we have excess of funds, as we look at the budget, just being frank, we thought we were going to have a 4% health insurance cost. We wanted to go self-insured. We couldn't go self-insured because we had a couple employees that we're spending close to $2 million on that made us go back to fully insured, and so we got a 9% increase. So that cuts into any excess that we have. We give our police and fire, rightly so, we want to do that. However, when there's an increase in funds, 5% comes off the top. 5% comes off the top. And so we don't get to the point to any new money that we have to make that deposit. So ultimately, we're going to have even more of an economic boom that we've seen that Jay Cheshire shared earlier today, to get to the point that we can give raises to police and fire and all our employees and still have something left over to put it in.
Okay. I know it's before your time, Mayor, but when's the last time we put some money in that fund?
so we've
put some since I've been in there.
We've put some in. I think the last year we put anything in was 2022.
Yeah.
I will say, and usually with the money that's gone into that reserve has been that 0.5% contingency that we fund every year. Usually that money is the money that we move over into the reserve. We have been strategically not moving that over as we work through all of the FEMA projects related to tornado, because the city has a match portion for those. And so a lot of the projects are 75-25. At one point, there was discussion of the state kicking in 12.5%. We've been trying to push, and I've been pushing the emergency management team to try and see if they can get that. But at this point, it doesn't look like we're going to have that. So that money really is earmarked for our match component for the FEMA grants. And so that's why it hasn't been flowing into that reserve fund, because we knew we had this match. But until we get final numbers for all the projects that we're doing, including Fire Station 9, that they're still constructing, and as Matt and Nathan and team keep working with Adam, with the state, to increase the amount of allocation for those projects, we'll finally get to a point, once they're done, of what the true number is that we're going to have to move over into our separate fund where all of our grants are administered. So if you look at our financial statements, fun plug for financial statements, when you see the negative fund balance in that fund, our grant fund, that's primarily related to the FEMA costs being in that fund and not necessarily the full match being in there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any more questions? Director Wyatt?
Thank you. Nick, I was looking at the documents that we got in our budget workshop. And there was a data sheet that went with each department that reflected the budgeted numbers, this is people, budgeted numbers, the field numbers, and the vacancies. And when I look at that and take it back to your full-time staffing model, the numbers don't agree. And one of the ones that doesn't agree the most is the one for police. And in that budget workshop, we got a document that said 705 were budgeted, which I think we made notes that that would have been June of 2025, where the numbers came from, 705. And then field was 595 and vacant was 110. So when you look at your full-time staffing for police, it shows 707 adopted budget in 2025 and proposed budget 699. So does that mean that we're gonna add the difference between 699 and 595 in police in the in the 2026 budget? So why would we have a document in our budget workshop that has all the numbers of every department, and that's just one, that's the most egregious one. All of them have differences based on what you have for us today. I know people make up the biggest portion of our budget, so how do we reconcile those numbers?
So for police, and police is going to be a very unique situation. So the budgeted number would have been 707. However, during the course of the year, as we were doing the budget, as we were beginning the budget process, we received notification from LRPD staff that there were 2 civilian positions that we had to remove. The reason why those positions had to be removed is because they were originally created to do background checks and things like that. State law changed and said that those positions had to be done by uniformed personnel. Therefore, there was no need for those positions anymore. So that's why we went from 707 to 705. So when you would have gotten that, that would have been at that point in time where when they received those requests and HR, who manages the personnel component, they would have removed those positions from the model and what's in the system. And so all that information that you received related to positions was directly from our current system as it's structured. And so for them, the 595 would be their fill positions. So there's, as we've talked about and as we highlight in all of our quarterly reports that we submit over to you, police has been down significant numbers of sworn personnel. I use sworn because that's what we call them in Texas, but sworn uniform, same thing. This entire year, they've been down somewhere between 60 and 80 positions throughout the course of the year. And then the other delta would be they have a number of unfilled civilian positions, which is how we were able to move those grant-funded VOCA positions over to the general fund seamlessly because they had vacant positions.
And just tell everybody what VOCA is.
Are there some grant-funded positions that are not showing, that wouldn't have showed up on that data sheet that you gave us at the budget workshop?
So it would have just been those 2 positions that were civilian that we removed based off the direction from LRPD that had to go away because they couldn't use those positions for their intended purpose anymore. So that's why the budget would have, adopted budget showed 707 and your data sheet showed 705 because we ran that.
595.
The budget
positions.
Those are the filled positions. So you would have, the 595 includes their grant funded positions. So at that point in time, the victim's advocate, oh my gosh, I'm going to blank on all this stuff. Where is he?
Victim Advocate Services Program, victim services, just, that's what it is.
Okay, so there was an anomaly with that number then, based on what we got and based on what we have today.
Right, so it would have been the 2 positions that would have been removed, that police directed us to remove, that they could no longer fill. That's where the 707 and 705 come from. The 595 would have just been the people that we had employed at that point in time. That would include both your sworn personnel as well as your civilian staff for LRPD.
Okay, all right. Maybe I'll send you these numbers and you can help me further, but that was the one that was so out of whack. There's differences in almost every department for what was budgeted and what was filled versus what was adopted budgeted here and what the proposed budget is.
And so the proposed budget does have reductions in positions. So across the board, we have 15 reductions.
This is more reductions than that, though, I think. I'll send you, I got a worksheet. I'll send you my worksheet, and you can see what I'm looking at. But the numbers came off of those data sheets that were presented to us when we had our budget workshop, trying to compare that to what we have full-time staffing now. is what I'm looking at.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Director Computers?
Done with this. We're done. Mayor, I know we've gone through our agenda meeting, but I've been reading Antoine's M6, and could he have a minute to explain it to us, to talk about it? And then when we talk about this, I'd appreciate it if one of the chiefs are here to discuss and talk about their opinion of this.
Yes, and Chief Dyer is here. But Director Phillips?
Yes, appreciate you, Director Computers. I was going to have this conversation next week, but happy to do it now. This goes back to the spring.
Probably better next week, but go ahead.
Say what?
Probably better next week, but go ahead.
Well, he started it.
I understand. No, I'm fine. I'm really, yeah, I'm fine. He's coming. Trust me.
Well, I'll give an overview, and then Chief Dyer, if you have anything I add, you can. But this goes back to, I think, the spring of this year, Director Computers, when we were having the discussion about ShotSpotter. As the board may recall, the first vote for that failed because someone, I think a couple people were absent, came back, we rescinded that vote, and then ShotSpotter was added. In the midst of that conversation, I brought up the idea of adding some additional community engagement from the police department as it relates to the technological devices that are being used by the police department. I was hopeful that we would vote on this back in the spring, where it's now ready now. And the high-level overview of this is there's a lot of things that the police department is doing, whether it's with ShotSpotter, the Real-Time Crime Center, that as we learned during the ShotSpotter discussion, we don't know the impact of it. And this ordinance will set the framework for the police department to share that information with the board on an annual basis and share it with the community when they do their quarterly meetings anyway. Last thing I will mention that this has been worked on and fine-toothed and edited and revised by the city attorney's office. Both Tom and Lynette has looked at it. We've met with Chief Miller, who has some questions about it. We got those questions addressed and revise this version of it. I spoke with Chief Helton today briefly. There's some wording. I don't think it's the spirit of it, but some wording that he may want us to tweak, which I want to talk to him, and that can be done but between now and next week. But that's a big picture overview from my standpoint. This is something that the community made clear to us, and I supported it. And I told them that I was going to bring it before this board, and I want to be a man of my word and do that. So hopefully we'll have Chief here to give some more color to it. But if Chief Dyer has anything to add, I definitely will yield the floor to him.
Thank you, Director. Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, board members, or directors. I do stand in for Chief Helton tonight. He had some unforeseen duties that he had to be called out to handle. So I think it's best that the words from Chief Helton comes from him. His opinion of this comes from him. He has given me leeway to speak on it, but if this is not going to be voted on this evening, there's no reason for me to stand here and speak. So I will stage left if there are no questions for me.
Thank you, Chief Dyer.
Yes.
So, Director Computers, I hope that gives you some context on what we're doing. Again, just adding some framework and annual reporting on how the police department is using the dollars we gave to them to use the technology they do to protect us, to make sure the public is aware of it.
Thank you. Members of the board, as we come to a close again, just want to give credit to Nick and his team and Chief Hubbard and all the department directors and their teams who played a role in this budget. It's it's a growing budget, it's a tight budget, it shows the success, so we're able to, while we saw the economic concerns, we're able to weather that through our successful economy here in Little Rock to get us to this point. So we're grateful. There's no budget cuts per se. There's no individuals in the reduction of force, and we're able to still give raises to all of our employees in the midst of a 9% health increase, and so health insurance increases. So we, again, we'll be ready. All the department directors are instructed to be here every Tuesday until the end of the year. And so on behalf of them, in the spirit of the holiday season, and we would love to have this budget passed before Hanukkah and Christmas. And so I believe Hanukkah starts when, Director Peck? No, it's before, it's early this year. It's the 17th, yeah. Well, the 16th, yeah, 18th, yeah. Depends, but, so that being said, seriously, if there's questions, I mean, there's not a whole lot in the budget to play with when you're giving 5% raises to police and fire and a 9% health insurance cost. Just want to be very clear on that standpoint. But the things that you all have been concerned about with some of the I don't want to say outside agencies, those have been taken care of as I promised from that standpoint. I think we're good to go. We would love to be done before Hanukkah and Christmas, and so the plan is again to put it on the agenda on December the 9th. Clearly, we'll have everyone here next week. If you got any questions, please direct the questions to Nick. But also, I just got to be clear. So we got to have it passed by the end of the year based off the new state law, and so. Based on new state law, if we don't have it passed by the end of the year, then we use the 2025 budget. And I'm sure police and fire would not want that because they want their increase, right? So I'm kind of thankful for what happened. That's one thing I'm thankful happened in the legislation. That being said, meeting adjourned.